Well, we're here. I can't believe that. I think it was 2 weeks since we did the last one. Whiskey and rum and Coke, Diet Coke, part six. And quite possibly, I don't know about what you guys think, it seems to be quite popular. That's it. Seems to be quite popular. We could be called Swigs and a Sig from going on, which is got quite a nice little catch. What do you reckon? So we change it to Swigs and a Sig.
I
I
like
like
that.
it. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so we can become known as Swigs and a Sig podcast. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm going to get straight into here with a question. And that question is to kick off today's episode, I would like to explore money and how it has played out or is playing out in the global games going on at the moment. In these present times we find ourselves in, what's really going on, and if anything, how can we be more aware of what's going on? And I'm going to kick that to Camel first and see where it takes us.
How can we be more aware? We got to just keep doing research, keep studying every day, uh, trying to expand the knowledge base. As for the first part, what's going on with money, I wish I knew. Um, there seems to be some hints that debasement is mathematically guaranteed. Other than that, I think it's a one day at a time process. And I think the asset holders are going to be the real winners of the next decade for sure.
Yeah, it's a really hard one in it because it's not only it's not a thing of when the present system is going to go and the money is going to go a different way. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. It's just I'd like to know. I'm in the middle of selling a flat at the moment. And I think, well, I'm going to get this money in from the flat. And if I don't use it in a certain way or put it into some sort of asset or do something with it, am I going to lose it to a new system that comes in is going to be devalued or whatever? And so it's quite a scary thing not knowing exactly what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. To take more of a bit of a deep dive, I'm going to come back to Camel. And what's your play? What do you think money is, mate? And how have we got with all this money debasement that's talked about, inflation? Are are we going to see this or the possibility of seeing this current setup running its course? Do you think soon or not soon? I know there's like lots of. I'm just trying to give you expansion of where you want to take the subject, really.
I don't know. It depends how you define soon.
Yeah.
I think one thing I've learned over the years is things always take longer than you think they will. Um, so if by soon you mean the next few years, I'm not sure that's the time frame, but I think probably by the time we get into the next decade, like once we get past 2030, I think money will probably look quite different. As for what money is, money just solves is it the double wants problem? So it gets us out of a barter situation and it gives us something to exchange, something we can all agree on that has a perceived value at least, if not a real value. Preferably a real value, but today I'm not convinced that I'm not convinced that's the case anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I definitely think we're towards the end of the cycle, and there is probably going to be a digital component at some point. But I think probably things are not going to change too drastically over the coming couple of years at least. But like I said, by the time I think we get to 2030, I imagine money looks quite a lot different to the way it looks today.
So you're looking at really sort of 6 years down the line before we see any sort of major change in the way we use money, as in from fiat currency and all that lot. Can you not see things going a very different way already? Because I don't know. For me, I look at it and I think, and maybe it's just a bit of fear in me or the way I've been seeing things going, and I think, well, they're building up to something where they can change the system. And with everything going on now, with America, with Russia, with Ukraine, with Palestine, Israel, all that sort of stuff, these are all precursors to some sort of event which will make them say, right, it's time to flip, or oh, due to this, it's time to flip onto CBDCs or a CBDC and fiat currency system for a while. Do you not see that happening at any point soon then? When we say soon, before 6 years.
No, I don't think so. And they've all got their CBDCs sort of ready to go. They've all written the white papers.
Yeah.
They've all got them there. But I don't know. I think it's going to take longer. Like I said right at the start, things always have a way of taking a lot longer than you think they will. Um, I think I think it will take towards the end of the decade. I think that's been the plan all along. I don't think the plan was to roll them out in the next year or two.
Okay.
Maybe they would could I could maybe see them starting to introduce them in the next year or two, and then maybe they run parallel to the current fiat
Yeah.
system for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, but in terms of, a complete shift in monetary or money as we know it, in terms of repricing gold and gold backing whatever the new digital system is, I don't think that's only, 12 or 24 months away. I think that's much later in the decade.
All right. And I understand what inflation means, like totally, as in the prices going up and all that lot. Can you just clarify debasement to me? What exactly is debasement? Is that like the money sort of,
Debasement, yeah, go on.
yeah, yeah, not having the value that it's got, or
Debasement just means if you increase the supply, you debase the currency, meaning it gets weaker because you've increased the supply. But it's different from inflation because inflation requires another component, and that other component is called velocity. Velocity requires, or sorry, is the number of times money changes hand. So if I get paid from my employer, and so therefore the money has gone from my employer to me, we say that's got a velocity of 1. If I then go to the barber and pay £10 of that to the barber for my haircut, that will be a velocity of 2 because the money has now changed from my employer to me and from my employer to the barber, from me to the barber. And then if my barber takes it to the pub and buys a pint, now it's got a velocity of 3. So every time the money changes hands, it increases the velocity. And that is what it takes to have inflation. Inflation needs to have both components, it needs to have the velocity as well as the increase in monetary base or the monetary supply. So that is, wholly speaking, the difference. You can have debasement without velocity. And a lot of the reason I think they ended up locking us down over the past few years was because it completely stemmed the velocity. It completely killed off velocity because everyone was stuck inside and no one was, money wasn't out there changing hands and sloshing around in the system. So does that answer your question, I hope?
yeah, yeah. So, in other words, by slowing down velocity when they locked us down, they tried to control inflation.
Yeah, they stopped. Inflation would have been way worse if we weren't locked down. If everyone was out and businesses weren't going bust and money was changing hands at the rate that it normally changes hands at the same time as they expanded the monetary base by, what was it, 80 odd percent in terms of the dollars. They created 80% of the dollars that have ever existed in something like 18 months. If we'd have been out and about and the money was changing hands, then the inflation would have actually been significantly higher than what we experienced.
Wow. So, do you think they actually did that for that reason, or do you think it was because of COVID solely, or maybe a bit of both?
I think it was a number of factors. I think they probably were testing to see compliance of the nation or of the world. I think they were probably also seeing what they could get away with. And I think it was possibly also a controlled demolition on some of these smaller businesses. I think they knew full well that small businesses would go out of business once people were locked down. Um, I
Why
also
would they give us
think
the 50 grand grants and all that sort of stuff then if they wanted the business to go out?
that's just keeping the monkeys happy. That is what's it called from the Roman Empire?
The monkeys.
No, they gave what is it? And they paid them not to revolt, right?
Oh, okay.
So when they knew the currency was failing and everyone was going to revolt, and instead they just chipped off coins and they gave everyone money and said, "Oh, don't, just chill, take this money, go and be happy." And that
Right, right,
they
right.
paying them
So it
not
was
to
to keep
revolt.
us all calm.
Yeah, that's what I think it was. That's what I think those stimulus checks were. I think it was like, oh, okay, we understand you're struggling. Here, have like 2 grand, right? Have 2.5 grand, whatever
Why,
the number was. Just don't revolt yet, right? Like stay in your house, be locked down, be a good monkey, and watch TV, and have the money. That's
why would they have wanted the small businesses closed down?
because it ultimately forces more people to have a requirement to rely on the state.
Hmm.
And ultimately, they need more and more people to rely on the state and the government so that they can eventually roll out the CBDCs, right? Remember, when everyone's chilling and everyone's got their own business and their own income and their own property and no debt, it's very, very hard to get those people to accept a CBDC.
Right, right. So as far as debasement goes, with many countries wanting to get rid of the dollar or trading in the dollar and all that sort of stuff, like the BRICS nations, even though India, being part of the BRICS nations, doesn't want it because it's got such an affiliation with America. Um, do you think that if they did stop buying their bonds and all that sort of stuff, that money would flood back into America and debase the currency there?
Not necessarily. I think ultimately, America, because it's the world reserve, they get the privilege of exporting inflation to everyone else. So they're going to continue to be in the driver's seat there. Does
Mm.
dollar demand get stripped from things like BRICS? Possibly, but I don't really think it's going to have a big impact on the dollar. I think the dollar's still going to get to keep the world reserve.
Okay, so you don't think if we have, like, people talk about the new world order, and some people mistakenly talk about it as in, oh, it's a takeover of the world and this, that, and the other, and one controlling force. But really, the new world order is about America is the world order at the moment. It holds the dollar, and the dollar's traded in everything. But a new world order may mean that, say, China took over the main currency or whatever. And I'm not saying it would be China, but that's the case on that one, right?
I think when we're talking about like a new world order, we're talking about one world currency, one world taxation, one world law, one world everything, right? That's what I think we're really talking about. So whether here's my idea for this, right? So if I back up a little bit, typically what we get are these approximately 100-year fiat currency cycles. So the currency starts off life, it's backed by something, gold typically, let's say, and then eventually they take it off the gold standard like they did in 71 for the US, and
Yeah,
then they print and they print and they print, and it becomes more and more worthless over time until eventually they go, this doesn't work anymore, we need a new system, and then they reset the whole thing. And then they usually, what happens is you get a rising power come up and take the spot of the world reserve currency. They now are the new world reserve. They
yeah,
have some kind of backing of real value, whether it's silver or gold or something else, and then the whole thing starts all over again.
yeah,
So normally that's how it works. And if history was to repeat like that, we would probably expect China, which is the number one contender for the top spot, we'd probably expect China to slot in, right? So if this
yeah,
thing was to play out like it always has done historically, the dollar would, eventually be inflated to completely worthless. They would lose their power as the superpower and the world reserve. The next contender, which happens to be China, would rise up. They would have the new world reserve currency. They would have theirs backed by gold initially or something of value. And then the whole thing would go all over again for another 100 odd years. But I think this time around, America know this is the case. They don't want to give up the world reserve. And so instead of allow their currency to be completely destroyed and give up the power and give up the world reserve status to the next number one contender, I think this time around they're trying to intervene and say, well, instead of do it like that, let's just all have a big reset. Let's all just agree that this current system isn't really fair, and no one wants to have just one nation in the superpower. Let's all have this reset. Let's all make it fair, level the playing field, and then we'll maybe have this basket of currencies that form together a one world currency. And I believe that's the end goal. That's what this whole reset thing is really about. That doesn't necessarily mean that China won't have a digital yuan and we won't have a digital
yeah,
pound, they won't have
yeah,
a digital dollar, but it ultimately means it will probably all be connected to some kind of, central bank SDR, special drawing rights, that's backed by gold and a basket of other things. And ultimately it will function at the top level. Instead of having America with the world reserve, you'll have this sort of international basket of globally accepted currencies so that you don't have one nation bullying everyone else, because that's what it really is a bully system, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
no doubt.
America gets to bully everyone else and push them around and export their inflation on everyone else, and everyone else just has to deal with it because everything internationally is settled in dollars. And
Yeah,
that's why you're seeing like the likes of BRICS rise up and say, well, we don't want to settle everything in dollars. We don't want to price our commodities in dollars and then have to run it through your banks and then bring it back to our own country. We want to just handle our own stuff. Um, and like I said, historically, you would expect to see this rising power overtake the current world reserve as it is inflated to zero. But I think that's where the reset comes in. I think they've kind of agreed that they don't want China to have the world reserve, but they know they can't maintain it. So instead, they're probably going to try and do this whole let's be fair, let's no more bully system, let's usher in this new one world system, and then everyone can have their own slice of the pie in an equal way.
But then we also had there was one of the countries, I believe it was Iran, but I may be mistaken, who wanted at one point to bring in a gold currency, not only gold backed, but a gold currency. And America assassinated the leader of that country to stop it from happening. May not have been Iran. I can't remember.
Libya.
Right.
Libya?
Was it Libya?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're on about. Gaddafi.
Quite possibly. So, yeah, they've controlled things in that way and made sure that people don't come away from the dollar by doing things like that. So these sort of things have happened before. But then when you spoke about New World Order and said, well, that is about one world order and one law and one currency for the whole world, I mean, maybe a bit idealistic. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like anything, you can use it for good or bad, right? Like a knife could be used to cut my steak, or it could be used for other more nefarious things. So I don't know if I don't know. I don't know is the honest answer. Maybe it would be good, maybe it would be simple, or maybe one world tax means 65% tax on all your income and CBDCs that no one's allowed to hold over above a level of $2,500 worth, or who knows? Who knows?
Mm.
What's really interesting for me sitting here listening, one, that little fuse is beginning to get lit from Camel, which is really cool to listen to. But two, a lot of when I sit there and digest conversation, sometimes a lot of things that go through the back of my mind personally, and I don't know what you guys think, perhaps you can expand on it, is that this is bigger than East or West or North or South. Campbell's heard me always refer to it as the boys' club. And I'm beginning to sort of really appreciate that the possibility when we look at things globally, there's got to be something above the nation state. Because to get things going globally, it isn't a case of China saying, oh, yeah, that's okay, or the US saying, there's got to be something, maybe to me, in my mind, sitting over the top of all that and going, okay, this is how we can do things. This is what we want to do. Does that sort of make any sense?
Well, there has always been the talk about the families, isn't there? 4 or 5 major families that control everything. How much of that is a conspiracy theory or how much of that is real is another matter. What do you think, Camel?
That's real. It's the Council of 13.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
It's the Council of 13.
Yeah.
Oh, please explain.
There's 13 large families, not 5. There's 13 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you Google it, you'll find the pyramid. But yeah.
All right. Okay.
Those 5 families are so rich that they control governments. They instigate wars. They do things in certain ways to control the world, and to control what happens in the world and who's dominant and who ain't. And that feeds into their wealth. Wasn't it those 13 families or whatever that met on that island? What was that about?
Oh, in Switzerland or whatever.
Yeah, they all met up, and it was to actually introduce the certain banking systems and all that lot, and they created certain things.
Oh, I know what you mean. I can't remember the
Jekyll Island.
Yes.
I don't know what that was about.
Yeah, the creation of the Federal Reserve, is that right?
Yes. That was that side of it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Name some of the families. I can't even remember them now. My head's not working too well.
Rockefellers.
Yeah.
The Windsors.
Right.
Do you want me to Google it?
Go on then. I remember Rockefellers. As soon as you said that, I remembered that. There's another one I know.
The Rothschilds must be in there.
Rothschilds.
Somewhere.
Rothschilds. Yeah.
And so these are the people that many believe, and I personally do as well, that actually control things. It's not the United States as such, with the governments over there and all that lot. It's actually these families that control the governments, the banking systems. finance, war, the whole lot.
It says here Astor, Bundy, Collins, DuPont, Freeman, Kennedy, Lee, Onassis, Rockefeller, Russell, Van Dyne, Merovingian, Rothschilds.
Yeah. Merovingian sounds like those vampire things.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the Windsors is in here somewhere. It doesn't say it on here though when I'm Googling it. Maybe the Windsors is slightly lower down. Or maybe
Yeah.
I had an out of date list.
It's
But yeah.
mad though, isn't it, to think on that level that actually even our governments are nothing compared to the big boys.
Yeah, the governments are like 6 layers down below the
Yeah.
pyramid. So that's layer 2. And then the government is, let's have a look. I've got it here. Hang on. Council of 13. Below that, committee of 300. And then below that, you've got the think tanks. And then below that, you've got the central banks, tax reserve, interest revenue. And then you've got underneath that all the corporations. And underneath that, you've got the government. So the government is actually very, very low down.
And did you say the families were number 2?
Sorry?
Did you say the families were number 2?
Yeah, below the wild monarch.
The wild monarch?
Yeah.
What the hell's that?
You don't want to know.
No, I do.
I'll tell you off camera.
Okay. Oh, it's too bad for YouTube, right?
Is this dodgy then?
Is it dodgy? What do you mean?
When you said you don't want to know.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Is it dodgy to say then?
I don't know if it's dodgy to say.
Or is it just like pure wackiness?
It will sound very wacky.
Well,
I mean, I can tell you if you want to know. I'll tell you if you want to know.
Oh,
You
we're curious. Come on.
You might think I'm mental. The number 1 is Lucifer, the demon.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
And you may think like, well, Camel's lost his mind, but
No, not at all.
That is when you look into it, that's how it works. Because this is the
But then wouldn't you have to be believing in, say, Christianity for that to be real?
Not necessarily Christianity. You just have to understand that this is the fallen realm, and he was made king of this realm. And
yeah,
if
but
you,
then that...
I'll say this: I'm not trying to force any beliefs on anyone, and everyone can go and do their own research. And but when if you really think about it, right, all of these higher ups are into some very nefarious stuff on some islands involving some younger people, right? And it begs the question, right? Why is that? And it turns out it's because that's the highest form of blasphemy to God. So I wasn't intending to take it super spiritual today. I was trying to veer away from this as much as possible.
Yeah, can I just butt in?
Yeah,
dude. The whole point of what I want to do with these chats is to create a safe space for people to freely speak and think.
Yeah.
And I know with the 3 of us, it's really cool for you to do that. Like Cobra can do it, I can do it. I'm just here to listen, and I'm loving the conversation already. It's absolutely brilliant, and I think it's got it's important to a degree that people are free to express themselves how they want to, and so you're not wacky, dude. I think you already know that I'm quite a spiritual guy and whatever. So we're not going to judge you on it, and what people think is what they think. But at the end of the day, you can say whatever you like. I probably agree with a lot of it.
I appreciate that. It's not so much you I'm worried about. It's more like the listener.
Sure. Yeah, I know.
Because not everyone has the ears to hear this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And not everyone as well. I know, despite all of us constantly saying, go and do your own research, don't take anyone's word for it.
Yep.
A lot of people will just take things at face value.
But
I mean, if you go looking for this stuff, you'll find it. That's what I'll say. So, and
the only thing I'll say about that, brother, is that if you go looking for anything, you can find it. I mean, for instance, even with Freemasonry, people have opinions and things about that, and a lot of it is because people don't know what Freemasonry is. They'll make up stuff about it. Now, when it comes to religion, that theory which you're talking about would sort of develop itself around Christianity or Judaism or anything that involves the devil. Or Lucifer, or whatever name you want to give it. And so the reason I question it is, yes, obviously what they're doing on islands and stuff like that, yeah, disgusting, terrible, and all the rest of it. But I don't know if we can put that down to Lucifer. I don't know if I personally believe that side of it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I completely understand. I completely understand. But I'll just say this, right? The people, it's not about what me or you believe, but the people at the top of that pyramid believe in what I just told you. That is their
I
God.
get you.
This
So
is where, sorry, this is where I find like where I will got sorry for butting in.
no,
I,
go.
we can guide this because it's quite important to understand the possibility. And then if we understand the possibility and we can't do it without talking about it, then we can start to, in our own independent way, start to go, oh, yeah, I see. Oh, yeah, because it has a relevance down that pyramid that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I make you right. So exactly what Camel just said. That it's not necessarily that we have to believe in that certain religion or Lucifer or the devil, but the people at the top believe in all that sort of stuff. And so let's say that their driving force, let's say the families, is the one above them, which will be in their belief, Lucifer.
Yeah, and that's why you can see this all over Hollywood, Netflix, music videos, right? You can see this everywhere, that they're always having this
Signs and all that.
devil worship and all of that stuff thrown in there, right?
Yeah.
And that is because their God is Lucifer, is the devil, and everything is structured around that's their belief. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that's what anyone should believe in or whether that's right or not, but that is just how they structure the entire pyramid. That is what the whole thing is about, and that is who they believe sits on the top of this Council of 13.
Gotcha. And this is the thing, it is everyone's beliefs and what they I mean, me personally, I found that, and this is a personal opinion, and I don't ever put down anyone's religion because I do believe in everyone having the right to believe in what they want to. And I respect all religions, though I don't believe in religion. But you find that people base a lot of their lives around religion, and man in himself, whether it be Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, whatever it is, will base their whole lives around that. So yes, I totally understand where you're going with that, that those families right at the top base it around Lucifer, let's say. And so for them, that's the top tier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think really it doesn't matter whether you have a religion, whether you just believe in God, whether you are an atheist. I don't think any of that really matters. I think, like I said, it's just about understanding that, at least to them, that's how they see it.
So this is why it would take any guilt away from them about what their actions do to the common man like us. How we're slaves, how we're in a system that we have no rights over, how they can send us to war and let us die. Because if you're believing in a Lucifer type thing, well, it don't matter. It's all for your own good.
Yeah, and there's also an argument to be made that everything they do is basically an inversion of the Bible. And
right,
look at the book of Revelation with this whole mark of the beast system, whereby you need a mark on your right hand or forehead to buy or sell anything, and blah blah blah. All of that actually feeds into what it is they're trying to orchestrate with the whole CBDCs thing, and no one can buy or sell without this sort of digital barcode or whatever. So you could make the argument. Some people would say that's just prophecy being fulfilled. Others would say that these, people that worship this thing at the top of the pyramid are trying to bring in deliberately and orchestrate this sort of inversion, this new beast system. But I don't think it takes away from the fact that, like I said, that is how they structure the entire pyramid. That's how they behave, and that is what they try to force on everyone through Hollywood and the music videos and everything else, right?
Mm. Mm. Very interesting. Very, very interesting.
So
I'm not sure how much. I mean, I believe in the families. I believe in that being a top tier. As far as whether we are actually having a devil thing that influences everything as such, it'll influence the people at the top, their minds and how they decide on what they want to do. But whether it's a reality of an actual thing is a different matter. I mean, I've seen the videos with the signs of certain music artists making certain signs and all that sort of stuff. But again, as I say, even when you go into Freemasonry, there are a lot of opinions about that being, worshipping the devil and all that, and it ain't. And I know that for a fact. But yeah, I won't go into that too much.
you're more than welcome to if you want to.
I'm very limited on how much I can go, how deep I can go. So I was a Freemason, or you never really come out of Freemasonry. I just don't have time to go to it all. and I got to a reasonable level of it, and there were certain things that made me change my opinion on it. But it was never about devil worship, and they talk about virgins being in the temple and this, that, and the other, and a whole heap of rubbish. And as I say, if you look on the internet, you'll find tons of stuff that tells you certain things that go on, and it's like so untrue, so untrue. And this is what I mean. You have to be careful sometimes about how deeply you believe what you can read on the internet. There's so much fake stuff out there. It's on another level.
Yeah, that it's cool. What?
I was going to say that went very quiet there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry. I have a tendency just to leave you and Camel to just go where you want to go. But what what's fascinating to me is take away the concept of for a minute, if we can, of the idea of Lucifer or whatever, um, and just go back to the concept of where we started this conversation about families, control. Now, okay, there is probably a bit of relevance about what those people want to believe in, but whether they believe in whatever they believe in has an effect on us down the pyramid. We'll call it the pyramid. And that's where I want to dig into a little bit, because that's where it affects us, not what they believe in to a degree. Some people might like to know that, but being a money orientated, financy typey podcast, this must have a diluted effect down onto us, and more than likely, possibly there's very clever shadow manipulation, I believe personally, um, of transmitting that belief system indirectly into how we perform at this present level that we live. So can we sort of get back into that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a very obvious way that we see in the Western world, and even moving into the Eastern side of the world as well. Um, I think Camel hit on a point which was very, very good earlier, where he turned around and said, well, they want you to be under their control with the governments and all that sort of stuff. And the more that we're under their control and we rely on the government, then the more they have control over us. And you've just got to look at, as you said, families and society and all that lot, and how they've broken down the family unit, the amount of divorce, the amount of separations, the amount of even when you go into feminism and they're saying, oh yeah, you know, we're strong independent women, which is taking away from the unity of a male and a female together and the support that each of them give to each other, has a massive effect on how we're conducting ourselves. And the thing is, it started off in the Western world, America and England, high divorces, single motherhood, and children not being educated properly with the right sort of things. And it's even gone into Indian place like India and other places, and it's spreading. It is spreading. India, you'd never see a divorce. You would never see a divorce. Now there's divorce and strong independent women and this, that, and the other. And it is breaking down our family unit and our family system without a doubt, which weakens us.
Yeah, and that's all part of the plan. And it feeds back into this thing because it all goes back to like the whole mismatch in the roles between genders and stuff. All of that comes down to this Baphomet worship, right? Baphomet is this like half man, half woman. It's right. It's got like breasts at the top and the male bit down the bottom, and it's this like horned goat thing as the head.
Yeah,
And again, that is what they're doing. They are pushing this whole narrative where they're trying to blur the lines between gender because they don't have the divine energies in either, right? So I completely understand. I completely agree with what you're saying. Like they are trying to do everything they can to just weaken strong families, to weaken men, because
yeah, yeah,
men that are drained and addicted to drinking, smoking, and porn and everything else, right? Those men can't be bothered to stand up and fight. They don't have any sort of
yeah,
ability to stand up for what they believe in. All the while, you've got these sort of women that are high in masculine energy and like, I don't need a man attitude.
yeah,
And it just completely separates everyone. And men and women are stronger when they are together, right? When
absolutely.
the man brings the masculine energy and the female brings the feminine energy, and together they create a whole. They're two halves of the same whole.
Yes,
And you see this with all over society. They're pitting religions against each other. They're putting the
yeah,
men against the women. they are doing everything they can to discourage people from having more children. They're kind of like
Yeah,
glamorizing not having children and making it seem like it's sort of a a bad thing to do that. And ultimately, it all comes down to just weakening the family, as you said. And then they're doing it from a financial aspect, where, like I said, they're sort of making these businesses go broke and have to rely on the state. And that's ultimately what they're going to need to create even more of if they're actually going to be able to roll out CBDC. They're going to need a bunch of weak people that are sick and
yeah,
starving, and then that's the only
and
people that are going to beg for these CBDCs, right?
yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. You see it in the younger generation now. They have no oomph in them. They have no go. They're very entitled. Men are being berated and looked down upon all the time now. You know that, oh, it's toxic masculinity and
Yeah.
misogyny and all this sort of stuff. You know, we're just being beaten down and beaten down and beaten down until men in general, and you look at the younger generation, are weak, are, you know, not showing strong masculine tendencies, to where we'll all bow down and go, yeah, fine, you know, we'll go with this because we've got no other choice. What can we do about it? Well, yeah, you're right. We've been broken down, and my generation definitely feel it. I look out there at what's going on at men, and I feel for them. I feel from just being berated all the time that we're toxic and all this, and I think, oh, stop. You know, look at what man has created and what he's done and how he's protective. And it does get to me. It really does.
Carry on, guys, and go to the toilet already. You stopped
But
too
I think
quickly.
also what you find through generations, Camel, is that you'll have a very strong generation, like the generation of men and women during the world wars, who were very strong. Then they try and provide for their kids, and so those kids are slightly weaker because they haven't gone through those atrocities and those hardships. And then each generation tries to make it easier for the next generation. Like, I don't want to see my son go through what I went to. But then
Yeah.
it gets to a stage where they're so weak that the next generation that may come when we're at the bottom will have to be stronger because they'll have to go through a struggle again. And whether it be war or whether it be financial change or whether it be whatever, they will become a strong generation again, and then it will feed down again. Do you know what I mean? So it's like a cycle.
Yeah, are you familiar with this quote? Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, bro.
Yeah.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
And we're now
Yes, I've
at
heard that before a long time ago.
Yeah, and we're now at that stage. Like, well, you basically just said everything, right? Like, we started off with these strong men from the war, and they create this slightly, they create good times after the war, and
Yeah.
then those good times create these weak men, and this is where we are now, right? We're
Yes.
creating weak men because times have been easy, but we're probably going to see this transition through the end of this decade where these weak men are going to create very, very hard times,
Yes.
and then it's going to
Well,
loop back
the
to the
thing,
start.
yeah, they may allow, because they're in that weak position, they may allow governments to put us under such pressure and such weakness and such bad times that we revolt, and that revolt or revolution may cause strong men again, or maybe it's wars across the world, that will cause those strong men again.
Yeah, I think that the hard times that these weak men will create will force men to learn to be strong again, right?
I agree.
And then
I
and then from there we go all the way back to the start where these hard times have created the strong men, and the strong men can then go on to create good times, and the cycle begins all over again.
Well, you see it in empires and all that. Why did the Ottoman Empire fail? Why did the Roman Empire fail? Because they struggled. They made an empire. They went across the world. They, well, raped, pillaged, killed, whatever. But they did whatever they did and caused a strong empire, which then became weak in the way of people were enjoying themselves. That empire was so rich and so whatever, and then it failed and buckled, and a new empire rose out of those struggles.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've seen it. We've seen it happen time and time again.
Yeah, and it certainly feels that way now. It feels like we're getting to the end of, in terms of the money and the cycles for the economy. It feels like we're getting to the point where the money's been made, the stock market's gone up to unreasonable levels, and Bitcoin's got this $1 trillion valuation. And that doesn't mean I don't think we've got, a bit more left in terms of upside, but I think we're getting pretty stretched, as you know. I think that
Yeah.
we're getting towards the end of these longer term cycles, and then what's coming next is probably those tough times, and those tough times will have to force men to be strong again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree totally.
But
And
the issue,
we're seeing it constantly. We're seeing the world fall to pieces in different ways, and when that happens, we get the wars, we get the struggles, and maybe powers that think that they're a bit stronger now will fight to take over land or take over things, and we're seeing it. And we're going to see. I believe we're going to see a lot of hard times, not only financially, but with wars and things like that. I think we're coming to a stage now where, and there was a thing about this new world order, which I mentioned earlier, which wasn't about one society. It was about the hierarchy of countries.
okay,
And that was the world order. There's a list of it as well that you can look up if you type in new world order,
yeah,
and it will show all the world order, and it will show the world order of countries at the moment. And then you type in new world order and it will show you the possibilities.
okay.
So there are two sort of sides to that new world order theory.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see a hierarchy system as well. It's really difficult, isn't it? Because we're just trying to make sense of it, and
Yeah,
no one really knows which way it's going to go.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's yeah, as I say, I'm trying to make some moves at the moment. I'm trying to sell certain things and do certain things, but it does worry me. I mean, I have to look into it more, but what you said that it may be 6 years gives me a little hope that I've got time to put things in place where I want to put them in place. But I also have a fear that it may happen sooner than that. I do. Um, I think we're like you said, we are so stretched at the moment that we're at a breaking point, and within a year or 2 years, it may. I think after the elections, we're going to see something. And the reason I say that is prior to the elections, they want everything to seem in order and good, or reasonably good, let's say. And then after the election, they can put whatever they want because they got 4 years to put it into place.
Yeah. So the reason I'm thinking we've got longer than most people are, or longer than say a couple of years, is I still think there's some more upside left in the stock market for one, right? So that will take us, if I'm right, that will take us somewhere into the middle of the year, July, August,
Yeah.
before it tops. And then when it tops, I'm expecting, these major cycle lows are not due until the end of 2025 and the end of 2026 for Bitcoin, right? So that's quite a long way away before we're even at cycle lows. And I wouldn't expect to just get to the cycle lows and then them go, wow, that's it. Like everything's fine again, great reset, blah, blah, blah. I would kind of expect the hard times, like that would feel hard on the way down. But
Mm.
what real hard times look like is when we come out of those cycle lows and instead of resume right back into a bull market, then we can't make higher highs, right? We can't make new highs. We just kind of get some small bounce and then another rollover, right? And by this point, we are now past the end of 2026. A good couple of years later, by the time we're at 2028, that's when people will be saying, okay, everything is broken now, right? Because initially you get this blow off top and a crash, and people go, wow, that makes sense, right? In hindsight, that makes sense. We went right up and now we've come right down again. But then they probably launched the printer doesn't work, we get more inflation, the stock market doesn't recover its highs, we find the major cycle lows, we get a big bounce, but then it rolls over again. And by now we are well into 2027, 2028, and that's when everyone's going to be going, what the hell, the economy's broken, right? It couldn't even recover, we haven't had growth in a long time, and blah blah blah. They keep printing and all we get is inflation, and it doesn't manifest as growth in the assets, and the stock market hasn't recovered, and companies are going bankrupt, and unemployment spikes really high. We've had this big recession. And so I don't think that it can be in the next year or two, because even if we just crashed from right now, right, even if we open up on Monday 7% down and then it just gaps down every day, right, and we just
Mm.
immediately start crashing as of Monday, I don't think, even if it went down 80% between now and the end of the year, that's just not going to be enough damage. That would be a lot of damage. It'd be a lot of wealth wiped out. It'd be a lot of leverage that would get flushed. It would be a lot of pension funds destroyed. Yes, it would be damage. But I don't think that's the kind of damage they can justify the CBDC rollout and a great reset over. I think that kind of damage is going to take a long, long time of wearing people down, and slowly but surely, you know, a round of printing, a round of inflation, everything, everyone gets poorer, and the stock market isn't a tool anymore to maintain your wealth or outpace inflation. I think that's going to take a full, multi years of slowly but surely wearing everyone down to the point where by the time we get to 2028-ish, I think that's when people are going to be like, please, please save us. We need something needs to change.
And
And
they
that,
need people to be desperate for sure.
Yeah, they need
They
people to be
need them to
desperate.
be very desperate to go on the CBDCs.
I'm just not convinced they can create that desperation inside of 24 months. I'm just not convinced they can do it that quickly. I think so.
Okay. Now,
Personally, that's my thought. That's my thought. Now, I could be completely wrong, of course. I could be way too optimistic, right? But like I said, something I have learned in all the time I've been doing this is it always takes longer than you think. And I think it is going to take quite a long time for
there's a
really
knock-on
wear people
effect, and
down.
there is a lapse of time before certain moves make certain things happen. So it could be an 18-month time lapse before we see the effects of certain things. But this is going to sound like a very dumb question, but I want to make this point just so that everyone understands. So when you talk about the markets and the markets crash and all that lot, a lot of people will think straight away, well, I haven't got any stocks, I haven't got any shares, I haven't got anything that will affect me in that way. 80% of the world probably doesn't have anything like that, and they're living day to day from their paycheck. So how does it affect the normal person out there if the stock markets crash and all that sort of stuff happens? How does it affect the man out there who just works his 40, 50-hour week, takes his money home and pays his bills?
Well, I mean,
Or
first of
woman.
all, if you've got a pension, right, then you've got stock market exposure. If you've got a pension, and like I think most people have some kind of pension. Um, Also, you got to think like when the stocks crash and companies go bankrupt and they can't raise any more funding and the economy is doing really bad, these businesses go broke. People work for those businesses, right? So
Right,
if the supermarket Tesco stock crashes 99% and then they can't recover and they can't raise capital and the company has to close down, how many people lose their jobs from working at Tesco's?
got
So
it.
even if you don't own the stock, that doesn't change the fact that a lot of companies are going to go broke. A lot of them are going to be bankrupt. A lot of unemployment during these recessions as well. When the share prices are tanking, the first thing people do is cut the staff. So even if
Yeah,
you don't own the shares, you may well lose your job. And then when you lose your job, you might not be able to get another one because it's in the middle of a recession. You might have to sell your house. You might not be able to service your mortgage debt. You might end up in the worst case scenario losing your house. So it just because people don't own stock doesn't necessarily mean they're immune from a big economic downturn or a stock market crash. And even silly things like your car insurance provider, right? That money that they pay you with if you crash your car, that's all in a portfolio chasing yield. And if that
right. So then if it crashes, they lose all their money, which is sitting there. And
Yeah, and that's an insurance company. So if you work for an insurance company or relying on a payout for an insurance company, you're not going to get it, or you're going to lose your job. So it really has this big, big, big knock-on effect all the way down.
so it affects everything from corporate right at the top to people who have major investments and could lose their money in overnight or within a few weeks when it drops,
Yep.
right down to the little man who is just working his job and hoping to survive day to day, because he could lose his job and prices will go up and things will
Yep.
get a lot harder. Thank you.
And
Yeah,
and and remember going back to I think it was mid 2022. I think midway through, no, it might have been mid 2023. One of those two. It was in July, either last year or the year before. The UK pension funds got margin called, right? And the Bank of England had to bail them out for billions of dollars. I think it was about 67 billion or 65 billion dollars in a bailout because they were over leveraged and they didn't anticipate the interest rate hikes. And they got
yeah.
margin called, right? They would have had their positions forced closed if the Bank of England didn't bail them out and print money in the middle of a rate hiking cycle. So those pensions, right? Like they're highly, highly leveraged, and the money's not really there, right? Only somewhere in the neighborhood of 60p in the pound of pensions is actually there. The rest of it is all in derivatives that are highly leveraged. So even if you go, wow, I'm young, I got a little bit of money in a pension, I don't really care, I'll worry about that later. Well, yeah, sure, but you probably got parents and grandparents that need their pension. And if they get margin called and they blow up, right, then suddenly, like, what are you going to do? Let your parents starve? No, suddenly that burden falls on you, right? So this can really have massive, massive impacts to absolutely everyone.
So can I ask you? So where they wanted, most people didn't have a pension, and then they forced employers to bring in a pension scheme. Was that for two reasons? One, because of the strain of the NHS, or sorry, of the pensions from the government was going to be too much over a period of time now because of increasing population, etc. Or was that also to bring more money into these investments through pensions?
I think it was probably both. I think probably they realized that they couldn't just keep paying state pension without generating some kind of pot, some kind of honey pot to dip into.
Mm.
So that was the first thing. They were like, well, so many people just keep having no pension, and then they get to 60 or 65, whatever the number is, and they decide, oh, now I've got to live off my £140 a week or whatever the state
Yeah,
pension is, which isn't even enough to live on these days as well. So that's another problem, right? Like, unless you've got no mortgage and you don't eat very much, then these days after inflation, like you're not going to be living a comfortable life, particularly, especially if you live in one of these major cities. So I think it was partially to try to fix that issue. And also, the government just loves to be able to have an excuse to print money and funnel it back into their own little pension
yeah,
pots and S&P trackers and all of this kind of thing, right? So I think it was probably a mix of the two.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good, is it?
No,
It's,
it's really not good. No, it's not. And I think that's the thing that investors take for granted. You know, if you're in this space, then the temptation is to say, "Oh, I can't wait for a stock market crash. Oh, I can allocate some money to the stock market and play the bounce." But they don't realize that, you know, if we go into a global recession, a big deflationary bust, if that really is on the cards, and I think it probably is, then this is not something to joke about. This is not something to rub your hands together with and say, "Oh, I'm going to make some money here." Like this is going to be really, really tough times potentially. And it feeds
well,
back into gold because, why is gold breaking out? I think gold knows. Like I said, gold always knows
yeah,
something, and that
yeah,
meaning the big players know something. And gold doesn't do what it's doing currently for no reason.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if there's some sort of major crash, and like you said, global reset, and then we go into CBDCs and all that sort of stuff. What would happen to all that pensions and all that? Would that all be wiped out?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If they're run correctly, they shouldn't be wiped out in theory. There's a theory that it will be taken from people deliberately, and maybe it is. Maybe that's what they need to create the what's it called, like the demand to get the public
But
to
how would
pay.
you have both? I mean, we talk about CBDCs, we talk about universal money going to everyone, a certain amount to everyone. We talk about, a limit of how much CBDC you can hold. But then how does it work with them giving you a universal payment and pension still running? Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense that there's so many different ways. What money can they hold? Like, all right, what I'm trying to say is if they say, for instance, 2 grand a month is what you can keep and the rest just wipes out over time, like you had mentioned before,
Mhm.
and yet I have more income coming in from a pension, I have more income coming in from something else. Well, does that CBDC income have a longer lifespan?
I don't know is the simple answer. Um, I would think I would think it probably goes one or two ways, right? Either they probably take everyone's pension and then just say you only get UBI and the CBDC and that's it. Or maybe what I hope for is there'll be some kind of like tandem system where the CBDCs run in parallel to the normal system, and then presumably you'd be able to draw from your pension and opt out of the CBDC, and maybe just a small percentage, like 10, 15, 20% of the population that are at the bottom, they would be forced to rely on the CBDCs. I'm not entirely sure how it
Or
would
could it
work.
run with a two-tier CBDC system where if you're given it by the universal sort of credit or whatever it's called, that has a time limit on it. But any other money that you make through CBDC from any other source does not have a time limit. So what's given by the government will have a time limit on it.
Yeah,
But
it could
if you
be.
earn extra money, it won't.
It's completely programmable. So the options are endless. They could literally program it any way they want to program it.
And
So yeah,
again, not knowing, it's a scary bit. We don't know what way they'll do it.
no, we don't. We don't. And I remain kind of cautiously optimistic about it because I just think they can't convince the government and the military and everyone higher up to just willingly accept a standard
Well,
CBDC.
they can't even convince the common man, like in a way of if they literally just said, here's the money we're giving you, and anything you earn outside also gets wiped out every month or whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a revolt over it because people are going to say, well, I have no chance of ever, ever, ever bettering myself because we're all on the same amount.
Yep, it could well be.
And then politicians aren't going to turn around and say, yeah, I'll take my 2 grand a month or whatever it may be.
Yep.
They're not going to sit there and say, yeah, I'll take 2 grand. The corruption would be immense in it as well.
No, that's why I think it's not going to work, and that's why I think it's going to be this two-tiered system. I think that
Yeah.
everyone that's got loads of debt and is really struggling or is relying on a state pension or some kind of, government allowance, I think they will probably get replaced into the CBDC system
Yes.
and the UBI. And then for the most part, they'll probably be happy about it. That's the
Those
sad
people would,
truth.
yes.
Initially, at least,
Yes.
once they start to get text messages to say, "Hey, by the way, you can't eat meat this week," or "Hey, you got to go and take something so that you keep getting paid," or whatever, that's a different kettle of fish. But I think that's what makes me lean on the fact there's probably going to be two systems running simultaneously. It's probably going to be this sort of system for people that have money or
I
have
agree.
assets and are higher up and understand this, because the bankers as well, right? The CBDC is the direct line from the central bank to the user. So that means that all of these banks in the middle, right? They just don't need to be there. Are all of those banks just going to give up the money? Are they just they're just all going to
Yeah.
go like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me that they can just get away with that on that level. So I think
And
there
the
is
other thing is,
probably
you can't put everyone on the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Let's say AI did come in to take away 80% of the jobs. You can't just go to everyone. You're all earning £2,000 now. For instance, I'm not saying it's £2,000, but
yeah,
you're all earning £2,000 now. Whether you were a doctor before, whether you were a builder, whether you were whatever, you're
yeah,
all going to be on a basic £2,000. I'm going
yeah,
to be like, oh, you're taking the piss.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there probably will be this two-tiered system. And if not, the thing is, humans are humans, right? They will figure something out, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it is something completely different, right? Like humans just are not going to allow, as soon uh, take Nigeria, for example. A while ago, they were trading because their banking system was so unreliable and their government was so corrupt that they would use phone cards. Do you remember, like years and years
Yes.
ago, you would top up your phone
Yes.
by taking it to a news agent and giving them a mobile phone card, and you'd load like
Yeah.
10 or 20 quid onto it, and that would give you some
Yeah.
credit for a while, right? Well, they were using that as money because they knew at the end of the day it always had an underlying value because they could always put that money on their phone and use it as credit, right? So they were
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
trading phone credit, right? They would go and put money on these cards and then use those cards as cash because that's how unreliable their system was. And now since Bitcoin, a massive population, massive percentage of the population in Nigeria uses Bitcoin instead. So, but my point is simply that, humans will figure out a way, right? Prohibition of things has been forever all over the place. And yet those things that are prohibited are still absolutely everywhere and easy to get.
Oh, well, they thrived a
Human,
lot of times. They thrived on the black market.
yeah. So, humans are humans. They'll figure something out. But that's what makes me lean on the fact that there will be this kind of two-tiered system.
Wasn't it an African country, maybe Nigeria, that tried to introduce CBDC? CBDCs, and
Yeah.
it just did not work at all.
Yep, that's right. They tried to bribe them and give people money, and they said that you've got to accept the CBDC, and we'll give you this payout as a thank you and a sweetener. And they all just saw it coming. They were like, "Nope, we'll use phone cards and Bitcoin, thanks." And then very shortly after, the Nigerian government withdrew that CBDC.
Ah,
Or withdrew, sorry, let me be clear. They withdrew the pressure that they were trying to force on people. They were saying everyone's going to have their banks closed. You're not going to be able to have any money. And that caused bank runs. But after a while, once people just said, no, we'll use something else, then they withdrew the pressure. So that CBDC does still exist there, but a very, very small percentage of the population use it. And everyone else is using Bitcoin or phone cards or whatever else.
so that really can show us that a way it can go. Like if that can happen in one country like that, it can happen all over the place. There are a lot of people who are going to be against it and say, no, don't want to trade in that, going to trade in something else. And, to what level do the governments have the power to push it on them then if they don't want it and will not accept it? This is why
Yes.
I think what we were talking about was weakening the people so much
Yeah, I was just
in
about to say.
every way possible that they have no choice but to accept it.
Yeah, and try to demoralize them so much that they just think, oh, what's the point? I'm never going to make anything in life. I'm never going to be
Yeah,
anything. Never going to be able to own property. So if F it, I'll just take the I'll just take the CBDC and
the
the
handout.
UBI. That's what they
Yeah,
want. And like
yeah,
you were saying, that's why they want the weak men, and that's why they want the family destroyed. So you've got no.
yes.
And I would also speculate this is why they're so anti-God, right? And again, I'm not trying to take it to any one religion or push anything like that, but they do seem to be very anti-God. And I believe the reason for that is people that have God answer only to God, right? So if you have any kind of religion at all, then you're going to do what the religion tells you. You're not, when the government says, oh, we want you to do this, you go, well, no, like I'm going to read my version of the book, or I'm going to answer the way my religion tells me, and I'm going to answer only to God. Only God can judge. So I believe that's a big reason they push this anti-God narrative as well, because
I
they don't
I
want
agree with
anyone
you.
not to comply. They just want
I Yeah, I totally agree with you. The thing is, as I say, I'm not religious myself, but I have very, very strong and good morals. Whereas religion does give people, in general, good morals and a good way to live your life.
yeah,
Now, if you get rid of that and take morality out of it all and leave men up to their own opinions of, and again, what we say, what we're seeing in universities and colleges and all that lot is we're not educating our kids anymore. We're giving them all sorts of rubbish to learn, and you know, oh, I'm fighting against this, I'm fighting against that, and a whole sense of entitlement, as I say, that I shouldn't have to do this. Why should I have to do it? I should only be able to work 2 days a week or whatever. So we're giving them that whole thing of not working, not doing anything, and we're entitled to have this. And in the end, those will be the people who will be happy to have a handout.
yeah, 100%. And there's a glimmer of hope in here, right? If anyone is listening and they're in the what would it be? Gen Z
Gen Z,
generation or below, whatever that age group is, all you have to do, they've got it easier than anyone because they're competing against the laziest, weakest generation that's ever existed, right? All you have to do is just promise yourself to work hard and be ruthless, and you're going to absolutely crush all of your peers. There's no
yeah,
competition in that generation whatsoever. So if you are listening and you're feeling demoralized and you're in that younger age bracket, then just work really, really hard every single day and know that you're against no one. You're against yourself, because
yeah.
no one else is really going after it in that generation. So there's at least a
Whereas our
hope
generation,
there.
everyone was pushing it to try and make it, so there was a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, yeah, and then you're competing with, the older generations. There's people that work 18-hour days with no days off and work out every single day, right?
Yeah, hello.
That's what you're up against. But if you're in this younger generation, you can overtake all of your peers very, very quickly just by working hard every single day.
I tell you what, we've really delved into several matters that all link. They're not separate identities. What's happening with our education system, what's happening with our marriages, what's happening with divorces, what's happening with abortions. They're all linked. It all links into one goal, really.
Yep, 100%. Yep, the top of that pyramid.
Yeah, that's mad. Is CPM still in this conversation?
Oh,
No,
mate, I'm just sitting back drinking whiskey.
I thought you might have nodded off.
No, I'm still in the council of 13.
Yeah, bloody hell, we moved up from there.
Oh, dude, yeah, it. I find this whiskey and rum or swigs and a cig quite frustrating personally, because I just want to jump in every other second.
Well, you can jump in. It's not that you
No, no,
can't
no,
walk at
not at
all.
all. No, no, I'm a heavy believer in sometimes sitting back and observing conversation, because that educates me personally a lot more, because then I can think. And that's something that I think is probably lacking in certain generations nowadays, or in
Mm.
certain people, really, the power of thought and actually giving yourself some space to think, and used to give me that in abundance, absolute abundance. Um, Guys, yeah, so much. I mean, that's an hour, and you've blown my mind, absolutely blown my mind. But the conversation sort of is really cool. I, I don't. I'm going to re-emphasize. I think Camel said a minute ago. I don't want to scare everybody by all this talk, but it is wisdom. It is reality, and it is, if you actually sit there and think, if you have time to think about what is going on, then you can probably see certain things play out. And what you was talking about, Cobra, what you was talking about, Camel, and start to make up your mind. Now, moving on to probably the second hour, is how, if this plays out over a period of time of which we do not know that period of time is going to be, what do we need to start thinking about? Is there a way? I remember from Camel's brilliant live with, is it, can I Is it Kamazabi?
Oh,
I've seen-
Kamazabi.
Kamazabi. I sat there listening to that and I thought, yeah, that's really cool. And one of the biggest things, and I said this to Cobra for a conversation the other day, one of the biggest things that he said when you said, "What's the way out?" and he said, "There's no way out, baby," something along those lines. But is there? Is there a way out? Should we be thinking, or what should we be thinking about as time goes on to try and conserve what many of us hopefully have been putting a lot of time and energy into creating, dare I say it, wealth or prosperity to protect? What should we possibly start to think about? Is there a way to protect it during these possible downturns that may be ahead of us?
Assets.
Camel.
Own hard assets with no counterparty risk.
Yeah.
That's
I
what I
think
think.
that's what we keep coming back to on that one, isn't it? We've said it several times that, if we're going to rely totally on the government's money or fiat currency and all that lot, then you're beholden to them. Whatever they change, whatever they do, you're going to have to go with that system. But if you have your own hard assets, whether it be gold, silver, Bitcoin, you've hopefully, because remember, they can decide to do what they want to do with all that as well. But hopefully you've got something to fall back on which is outside of the system, which they control.
Okay, cool. I'm going to jump back to you, Kamal, first on this one. When you say assets, can you give me that interpretation of what you mean by that?
Something that's not fiat, something that is anti-fiat, and preferably something that has no counterparty risk.
Okay, cool. And can you tell me why you think that way?
Because the system is more leveraged than ever, because hard assets that are hard to produce and take energy to produce and can't just be printed out of thin air are going to hold value more than, say, fiat currency will. And as for no counterparty risk, I personally just don't trust the system very much. I personally would rather have something in my hand, or something that is outside of the system, just in case all this stuff we talk about and speculate on turns out to be right one day.
Okay, can you give me some examples of what that could be?
Well, like gold, Bitcoin, and silver, property, land, even even more abstract things like art or a wine collection or a car. I know most cars depreciate. Some of them appreciate if you choose the right ones. Anything that you can own and hold, I think that therefore carries no counterparty risk because you're not extending your trust to somebody else. You're not keeping your money with another entity that could undergo some chicanery and lose your money. So I think that is, for me, that's how I like to play it.
And that is our only option, probably. Can't be anything else.
I'm just thinking. I don't know what the other option would be. I really don't. I don't know what the other option would be. Self-sufficiency and no debt, I guess. That would be another way to just avoid anything that comes.
Yeah.
So you don't
I mean,
necessarily.
my only issue with all this is, and I agree. Don't get me wrong, I agree, which is obviously why I do what I do. So it's not that I disagree, but just putting another point in. I've said it before. Yeah, we can hold all these hard assets and property and all the rest of it, but if the government start putting in rules that it means nothing, then what's the point? As in gold and silver. All right, you bring in the CBDC, we're holding loads of gold and silver. How do we get the value out of that gold and silver? We
Yeah,
have to sell it for CBDCs.
it's a very good point. And also with things like property and land, it sounds great, right? But the government is only ever one piece of paperwork away. Once they
From
decide
taking it
they
away.
want it, yeah, like you
Yeah,
you never really own it. So
we've seen it in Portugal. In Portugal, a friend of mine, this is what, 30 years ago, showing my age now. In Portugal, a friend of mine's family owned quite a bit of land and quite a few properties. And the government turned around one day and halved it, literally took half their land away. Just
right.
said, yeah, we're taking it. And there was nothing they could do about it.
Yeah.
Nothing. So this is what I mean. Yes, that's the only option we can see. And this is why we do what we do with the gold, silver, and Bitcoin. But if we go to a system of CBDCs and they say, well, yeah, sorry, you can't cash in that gold and silver for CBDCs because Joe Bloggs, who you want to sell it to, is limited to this amount of money per time, and it expires after this amount of time. He's going to want to use that for things that he needs to live with. And gold, silver is not going to be that. So it's a really difficult one, because I agree, as I say, which is why I do it. But because we don't know how the system is going to work or what's going to happen, you don't know for sure if that's going to protect you.
Yeah, you can never have certainty on anything, right? You can never have certainty. I mean, I guess Bitcoin possibly is the only thing that can't be confiscated if stored correctly. That's the only truly non-confiscatable, truly portable asset on the planet.
But unless there's a black market and people trading it on the black market,
yeah, well, I mean, it's a peer-to-peer system, so they can never really stop that. But then you can always take this argument one step further and say, "Oh, what if there's no internet? What if there's a cyber attack or blackout?" I don't know, man. Each one of those, I think, as we said this before, each one of these assets has some pros and some cons. And I think rather than hold just the fastest horse, you probably want a stable with as many different horses as possible to give you the best chance. And depending on where your net worth is, you could probably start to think about having multiple properties and maybe some of them not in your name, or there's a million ways to do this. If you're a billionaire, you could build an underground bunker. All right. So I think everyone's just got to kind of think about what relative to their own personal circumstances, what they think would be the best way to hedge the risk. And the rest is kind of just, we have to see how the dominoes fall.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, I'm going to take this a slower approach to the collapse of what we've been talking about. So for our viewers and for us to understand, possibly, can I have don't want to say opinion, but it is an opinion. Nothing here is advice. But what can people of, dare I say it, I call us the peasants, the peasants realm in the pyramid, the very bottom. What should we start thinking about if we have any, if we honestly believe, and I think most people that follow our channels have some sort of degree of belief that there is definitely a devaluation in our current currencies that we use wherever we live in the world. What would we say that would be the best way forward over a 5 to 6, 7 year period of going forward? Are the free assets gold, silver, Bitcoin? Because like you start talking property in most of the Western world, it's far out of reach of most people, far out of reach nowadays, and land and bits and pieces. Is Bitcoin becoming out of reach now? Is that the ploy? Is that what the big boys are doing now, taking it away from by pricing it out? Gold, would that be doing the same thing? Is it just down to silver now? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that. Look, gold has gone up for years and years and years, and if you look back in the 70s when it was maybe £100 or £20 or whatever an ounce, it's got up massively from then. But we always keep buying it, and whether we buy it in fractional, we buy it in ounces. Gold is always gold, and if it's gone up in price and you hold it and it goes up more in price, you're holding more value. The same with Bitcoin. Yes, we're outpriced in buying a Bitcoin. I've been wanting to get a whole Bitcoin, and it's quite hard to get now. But in the same token, even if it went down to, what is it, Satoshi? Satoshi. Even if it goes down to that, you can still buy Bitcoin, can't you? It's not stopping you. It just means that you're getting a smaller amount, but the value's there if it goes up. So I don't think we're being outpriced. So I would say if you can afford to buy a little bit, whether it be silver, gold, or Bitcoin, then start now. If you say it's a 6 year period, then start doing it. There's nothing to stop you starting, even if it's putting £25 a month away, £50 a month away, whatever it is, it's something, isn't it? So I personally would say that you're not being outpriced. It's just you're getting a smaller quantity for the money, but still having some is better than having none.
I would say I agree for the most part. I don't think you're ever going to be priced out of owning a bit of Bitcoin. I would argue for most people, they have probably been priced out of owning a whole Bitcoin. And particularly if we are going to get this big move upcoming for the rest of the year in Bitcoin that I think we're going to get, then quite a few people will be priced out of owning a whole one. But it just it just is what it is, right? A lot of people are priced out of owning a whole property. A lot of people are priced out of holding a whole kilo of gold. But that doesn't mean that you can't buy fractions of gold. It doesn't mean you can't buy fractions of Bitcoin. It doesn't mean you can't have some exposure to property. I just think like any amount is better than zero. The only incorrect allocation is zero. And
Yep.
I would also say that going forward, if I'm right about the stock market topping and we have this kind of recession and stuff like that, then what comes next is commodities. What comes next is any kind of commodities. So I think there's definitely going to be a way to exit the rat race. It's just we're going to have to be ready and willing to shift and adapt to that. I think instead of be focused on stocks, it's going to be a commodity driven bull market, and it's the commodities is what's going to make the money. That's where the
When you say
value is gonna
commodities,
be.
can you give us examples of commodities so everyone understands what you're talking about there?
Yeah, so the most well-known ones are gold, silver, copper, platinum, palladium. You can have sugar, cocoa, orange juice, corn, grain, wheat, livestock. The list goes on. But things that are essentially either made of metal or eaten.
Cool.
Coffee, there's another example. But I think that's where the value is going to be for the remainder of the decade. I think once we see this stock market top, whether it's this year or next year, and I think we will see the commodities really enter this new boom, and that will be where you can exit the rat race. So there's always opportunity, right? If you miss Bitcoin, fine. Like that doesn't mean you can't buy a bit of Bitcoin. If you're worried you can't get a whole gold coin, then you can get a tenth of a gold coin, perhaps, or some silver. And like I said, if you're worried that there's not going to be opportunity, I would simply say don't worry about that. Just be willing to pivot and adapt, and perhaps trade some commodities over the rest of the decade.
And if people want to buy commodities, is it the same way as buying shares in the commodity? And how would they do that? Do they have to find a platform to be able to trade in that?
Yeah, the most common ways would be either to trade derivatives. So that would be like a trading account that gives you exposure to that kind of thing. Or probably the easiest way for most people would be the ETFs.
So
So this would
paper
be,
commodity.
yeah, it'd be paper. I mean, I guess you could always go to market and buy a ton of copper if you really wanted to. But yeah, that would be the easiest way to play it.
Cool.
Or of course, you could play physical gold and physical silver if you want it in your hand with no counterparty risk, or you can play the papers, gold and the ETF, the silver, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's worth knowing.
But yeah, I think if investors should be willing to pivot to being commodity traders. If you've got a background in stocks and shares, then I would be thinking about switching to commodities in the not too distant future. That's certainly how I'm planning to handle it.
Do you think a lot of people are getting nervous with Bitcoin at the moment with it sort of gone down a little bit? It's not gone down massively, but it's gone down a little bit and it's sort of staying very stagnant at the moment. Do you think it's making people very nervous, or do you think people understand that, it's got a lot of room to move up at the moment and there are good things about to happen with it?
I honestly think everyone is nervous about Bitcoin all the time. That's honestly what I think. I think it's like the most emotional market I've ever seen anywhere, and largely that's because of how volatile it is. I mean, what we've done like 350 odd% off the lows just about 18 months ago, maybe less than that. So yeah, it's a highly emotional market. People are always worried. There's always doom and gloom. It's highly manipulated because it's got small market cap. So there's always news out there. Oh, they're going to ban it. Oh, this is a new law. Oh, so and so. Like we just figured out who Satoshi was. Or what if Tether blows up? You've been here long enough to see a bunch of
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, people are always worried, but the charts are the truth. The charts don't lie, and they've been working so far. So I think there's probably more upside left. I think, unfortunately, most people are going to be focused on Bitcoin repeating its standard shape. meaning it won't actually put in a top until next year, the end of next year. I think that's what's going to catch most people off, because I think it is going to top this year instead of next year, like most people expect. But at the end of the day, that is a speculation that is to be determined. For now, like I said, I think the only false or wrong allocation to Bitcoin is zero. And I certainly think that there's going to be volatility, there's going to be ups and downs, but I do think, wholly speaking, we are less than halfway to the top at this current moment in time.
And do you think a lot of the common people are selling at the moment?
I think, excuse me, I think most people are not even paying attention. I think most people are sleeping on it. I think
Right.
this is, generally speaking, the least participated in bull run I've ever seen. Out of all of them that I've been through and traded, this is the least participated in. So I don't know. To me, it just seems like retail is not here at all. In 2017, that was absolutely a retail mania. The 2021 had at least some signs of retail mania. I've seen no retail interested in it. I've had no family or friends text me and ask me about it this time around, where they did both other times. And part of me wonders if they're even coming back at all. And I know that's quite a controversial opinion. People say, well, retail always come back. But the truth is, retail has never really mattered. Retail doesn't have that much money to matter. And I just largely suspect that, yeah, most people are asleep on this, right? Like I said, I've had no text from friends and family. I've had no one asking me how Bitcoin's doing or is it time to get in yet. And maybe that comes once we cross 100K and it's all over the news. But for now, at least, I don't think they're here.
Right. And you're saying basically in the next month, through watching your videos and all that lot, within, I think, probably 25 days now, you're saying we should be starting to see that big movement upwards.
That's what the daily cycles say. Yeah. They say that we can't really do anything for another 24-ish days, 24, 25. And then it should be go time. And if it's not go time, that tells me that my working current hypothesis is invalidated and it's wrong. So that's fine, because, it's not about being right or wrong. It's just about staying on the right side of the trade. If I'm invalidated, I'm invalidated. The market has proven me wrong, and we'll just go back to the drawing board and draw up a new plan, and then we'll test that every day. But yeah, the cycles say that we can't really just come swinging out of here. That would be completely abnormal, and that's not to be expected. The cycles say we got to elapse about 3 weeks, find a low, and then it should be go time. And if it's right, then we'll continue to check in on it every day, right? We'll continue to say the same thing over and over again. And like I said, if it's wrong, we'll go back to the drawing board and we'll establish a plan B.
And if it's wrong and your theory is invalidated, would you sell now and then wait for it to drop and rebuy, or would you just hold on to it?
Well, are we talking about trading positions, or are we talking about the long-term buy and hold allocation?
Long term.
Long-term buy and hold, I have no interest in even thinking about selling until one of two things has occurred. Those one of two things, or one of three things, I guess. The first thing would be, I have no intention of selling it until I see a big blow off top this year, like I'm expecting. That's the number one base case. And I'm looking
Right.
to dump the entire lot once I've seen significantly higher and faster acceleration to the upside. Number two would be if this current idea is invalidated and we're just going to do what we've always done, which is kind of chop around, maybe pull back a bit, and then go on to make a top at the end of next year. That would be typical. 3 years up, 1 year down. That's what Bitcoin's always done. If that's what we're doing, then again, I have no intention of selling until I see a peak at the end of next year.
Got it.
And the only thing that could really force me to duck out of this market early would be if we started to see major technical breakdowns on the charts. So I would need to see Bitcoin trade. I'm just pulling up a chart now so I can be super accurate with you. Do you want it in GBP?
Yes, please.
Okay. I only work in dollars.
I
Yeah,
know, everyone does. I'm the only one who works in GDP.
so in GBP, I would want to see, for me to entertain starting to make the argument that something is wrong here, I would probably need to see price below 40K. Below
Okay.
40K, and I start to say to myself, okay, something is wrong. We're going a lot lower. Something is broken. But anywhere in between, we're currently trading at £50,600. Anywhere between that and £40,000 is, for me, still bullish structure, still in an uptrend, and I still expect higher prices.
That's very interesting to know, because considering that only 6 months ago we were down at, or maybe a bit more, we were down at 22K. You know, to think that going under 40, especially I know with the halving now, the cost of creating a Bitcoin, I think you said, was about 32,000.
36,000 average across
36.
all miners, I think. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
dollars. Sorry, that's dollars.
Right. Okay. So probably about 32,000 then in pounds.
Yeah, probably about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So to say that if it went under 40, you'd actually think, yeah, there's something wrong here. That's not that far off, as in, we've seen how Bitcoin can go up and down in thousands in a day. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and that's based on my charts, that's based on my technical analysis and just experience of knowing where a trend is breaking down. And for me, we can go all the way back down to about 39,800 pounds, and I would consider nothing technically damaged on the chart. But start to trade below that, start to trade, convincingly below 40k, and the chart is, as I often say, charts don't lie. If we start to trade below 40k pounds, then the chart is letting you know that this is not an uptrend anymore. This is now a broken down trend, and we therefore should be expecting lower prices. So, I mean, the caveat to this is we could wick it, right? So if we had some kind of flash crash that went all the way down to 40k or even 30k and then quickly recovered and was back at 45 plus k within 24 hours, then we can say, okay, fine. That was a flash crash. But we start to convincingly trade below 40k, it would be impossible for me to say in honesty that the trend isn't breaking.
Yeah. No, that's very, very, very useful to know and understand. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. I mean, if it went in 24 hours, I probably wouldn't notice it anyway. I'd be too busy. And by the time it dropped and went back up, I'd be like, oh, it's still all right.
Yeah. But I mean, you've seen the channel, right? There's that cycle low, as you said, due around 24 days time. Yeah. That will be a really good area to figure out what's going on. Because if we find that cycle low in about 24 days and we come swinging out, then happy days, we know what's going on. If we bounce out of there and we don't even make a new high, we just kind of continue to chop around, that would be the first very early warning sign to say to yourself, okay, something is wrong here. Something is wrong. It's not behaving out of that cycle low how we expect it to behave. We're expecting this to be chop around, cycle low, and explode. So anything other than that, and we should immediately interpret that as a red flag. That's immediately like the market is telling us something. The market is letting us know that something is wrong under the hood.
Got it.
So, but in the meantime, it's just a case of sitting tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I'm pretty sure we're just going to do more of what we've been doing. We've done this for a month. We're going to keep doing it for another month, and then off we go.
Cool. Thank you for that.
No worries. CPM, are you there?
I'm still here.
Still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
We never know anymore.
That's good. That's good.
We sort of come to an end of a subject. It's like, right, CPM, where's your guidance? Come on, where are we going now?
That's absolutely cool. Okay. I've got so much I want to talk about. It's crazy, but let me play into with Camel here, and that's cycle theory. Now, it's a big part of your channel, obviously.
Yep.
And on my last Whiskey Wednesday, I mean, I've been following you forever, following everybody forever, but it's the cycle thing. I don't know what can you explain to me what's going on there, or is there not an explanation? Because I've heard you use terminology like the rules of the universe with cycles, and I'm beginning to even at my level understand that it works, but I can't explain it logically.
Can I very quickly before Campbell, you answer this? Are we talking about the one where we were talking about the sunspots and all that sort of stuff and the cycles of?
Well, yeah, I think that was Cobra. I think he mentioned that.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you say that again, Cobra? What was that?
Where you were talking about the cycles of the sunspots and solar blasts and all that lot affect and how the charts are affected by that.
Yeah.
I was watching. Is that what you're talking about? CP or CPM?
CP.
CP. CP.
Okay, Cobb. Cobb and Cam. Cobb, Cam, and CP.
I did add the M on afterwards. There was a little break.
I know you did. Yeah, sort of. because there's something weird about it that I can't get my head around, but it obviously plays out, and it's took me a while to work it out myself, and to work that out myself, I needed to do the homework. I needed to plot my own graphs, charts. I needed to see it play out. I'm now producing my own fractals and trying to work all that out. It's really cool from my point of view. I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, what is this where does this cycle theory come about, and how did it come about?
So the cycles, I don't know. I don't know why they're there. Right. My speculation is that they are part of the code of the universe. And I say that because there's no other logical explanation. I've never been able to find one. There are speculations that it's to do with the options and futures contracts expiry dates. I had never been able to find a correlation between the two that was reliable. There was also speculation that they're driven by the moon phases and the moon cycles. And I ran statistical analysis and could not find anything at all statistically significant to suggest that the moon phases have any impact on those cycles that I show on the charts and on the channel. So the answer is I have no idea, right? They seem to just be this phenomena that is observable. And by that I just mean if you pull up an S&P 500 chart and you look at all the major swing lows and you count the days in between them, you will find that 70 to 80% of those cycle lows form inside of a 36 to 44 day window. I have no idea why. And the same is true of Bitcoin. If you pull up a Bitcoin chart and you slap on you identify all the cycle lows, you will find that 70 to 80% of them, and that 70 to 80% range depends on the asset. So maybe for Bitcoin, it would be 80%, maybe for S&P, it'd be 70%, whatever. It's asset independent. But if you pull up a Bitcoin chart and you mark all the clear cycle lows, you mark all the clear pivot points, all the clear swings, what you will find is between 70 and 80% of them fall within 60 days for Bitcoin, plus or minus 6 days. Now, I have no idea why. I have absolutely no idea why. But for some reason, they exist. And it's a weird thing because at first you think, well, this can't be true. And then you watch a couple of them and you think, okay, maybe this is true. And then one of them falls outside of the window and you go, oh, I told you it's bullshit. But ultimately, over a long enough period of time, you realize, oh, okay, I'm just observing a cycle low that shows up between 70 and 80% of the time, depending on the asset, inside of this timing window that seems to be specific to that asset class. So to answer your first question, why are they there? I have absolutely no idea. Cycles exist everywhere in life. So, if you go to the beach, you'll watch the tide ebb and flow in and out, right? The cells in our bodies have cycles. There are cycles absolutely everywhere in life. And these just seem to be another place. It's like the Fibonacci sequence, right? If you look for it, you can find it pretty much anywhere you look. So I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately. In terms of what was the second question? Oh, the solar cycles. I'm not sure whether or not that is correlation or whether or not they just fit. They just happen to fit. I can't think of a logical reason why they would correlate with the markets. But again, this is kind of what makes me think that they're just sort of hard coded into the universe because they're just.
Well, I can give you an opinion on that.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know so much if they actually do fall within the same cycles as the sun and all the rest of it. But I've always had a theory. You know how people talk about astrology and, oh, yeah, you're this star sign and you have these traits and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that's correct or not correct. But I do have a slight theory. Like, we know a major part of our body is made up of water. We also know that the moon, you just talked about the tides, the moon's gravity affects our tidal systems, right?
Yeah.
High tide, low tide.
Yep.
So the position of the stars and the gravitational exact fixture of the stars and the planets and the moons and everything at a certain point, a certain year, at a certain time, could affect the makeup of our bodies and our characteristics, let's say. So if that be the case, then maybe it affects the way we behave in certain ways. Maybe it affects so many things that we don't understand. The exact position of the stars. Astrology has been a massive thing in India for centuries and centuries and centuries. Do we understand it? No. Can it affect more than our physical bodies and water and waves and all that? Who knows? It's a very weird one, that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not sure if there's direct correlation there and I've heard that idea that what you just said about us being, mostly water, and of course the moon impacts water. So maybe, anecdotally, my wife used to work in A&E in the hospital, and they always used to be really annoyed when it was they used to track the full moon all the time because wild stuff would apparently always show up on a full moon. I don't know how much truth there is to that. In fact, I did some Googling on it one time, and apparently there was no correlation between the two, although people seem to spot that there is a correlation. But if you ask my wife, she will tell you for sure that all kinds of drunk psychos and craziness shows up every full moon, every
Bro,
full
in
so.
security, we would say exactly the same thing. We'd have a night, it'd all be going peak tong, and we'd look up and it'll be, oh, that's why it's a full moon. We'd say the same thing. All the idiots were out on the full moon.
Right. And I often wonder if that's where we derive the term lunatic and lunacy from.
Ah, yeah.
So I don't know. That's what I can say. I don't know.
But how it would affect Bitcoin and how it would affect gold or silver prices, I can't see that somehow myself.
Well, I mean, if it can motivate you to get drunk and punch someone in the face for no reason, maybe it can motivate you to max long Bitcoin on leverage or panic sell. I don't know. But yeah, maybe there's something to it. Like I said, I once ran a t-test using some statistical software, and I couldn't find any correlation between either the S&P and the moon or the Bitcoin cycle lows in the moon. So I could only conclude that they're not really related. But of course, that's not to say that people don't act weird on a full moon. That's just to say the moon doesn't necessarily drive the major lows in Bitcoin and the S&P.
I think, again, if you're looking for something, you can always find it. If you're looking for a correlation in it, you'll find a correlation in it. I think my brother used to go on about numbers, and if he wanted to find a number in something, well, if you divide that by that and add that to that and that to that, you get 777. Well, yeah, of course you do. What does that mean?
Yeah. I completely understand. Yeah, completely understand. Yeah. So, but yeah, in terms of the solar cycles, I don't know. But when that chart I showed in the week on that video, it's undeniable that I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's like 6 or 7 cases, and all but one happen to align approximately with recessions and spikes in unemployment. So whether they are correlated is to be determined. But if history is to repeat, and it seems to like to, at least approximately, then maybe we can expect the next solar cycle sunspot to line up with a recession and an unemployment spike. But it's certainly not something I'm basing my trading off of. Let's say that.
I'd be a bit worried if you did, bro.
Yeah. CPM.
I do
I
that
swear
on
he goes
purpose.
to sleep. He starts the conversation, goes to sleep, and hopes he wakes up in time.
Guys, I do that on purpose. It's really funny. It's really funny. One other thing before, I can't believe the time. This massively goes so quickly. But yes, you did answer the question for me, Camel, believe it or not, because there is no ultimate physical, logical explanation other than the possibility of a belief in something, I think that's quite important. And that's been sort of the tone of this podcast, really, which is quite interesting. An interesting thing that I would like to ask both of you is, in this day and age, are we obsessed with price? If the answer to that was yes, from an investing, trading, asset valuation, day-to-day type process of what we think we're doing, why do you think that is? Why are we obsessed with price above and beyond the value of what something could be? Why do we always go back to, well, what's the price of it?
Camel, do you want to go?
How else do we track it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there another way?
Well, sorry.
Yeah.
Could I just abbreviate that a little bit more? Why, if we think that maybe going forward, it's important to hold a commodity. We use silver for an example. Why is the value of topic of silver still valued in, or how much is it going to go to? I'm only going to get it because it's going to be worth this much. Well, what if the value is owning the quantity rather than what it's worth going forward?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. In the Bitcoin community, they say 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Which kind of implies you shouldn't be pricing a supreme, pristine money like Bitcoin in dollars, because a dollar is just going to go down over time, right? So it's the number of Bitcoin that matters, not the number of dollar value it has. And I guess the same could be applied to the precious metals. It's a very good question.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I think it depends, right? A lot of people are kind of stuck on, oh, I want to make more money. I want to make more fiat. And if that's where you're at, then you hope to buy silver at whatever it is today to be able to sell it at a number that's higher up so that it can give you more fiat. But it's a good point that if you really understood what you hold, you would value the weight in total, right? As a way of preserving your wealth, your purchasing power. And I guess the same goes for all of these assets, right? Because I often think this about property, like at face value, property seems to have been this fantastic investment. Like, oh, I bought a 3 bedroom house 25 years ago for 60 grand, and now it's worth 500,000. It's like, yeah, but that 500,000 doesn't buy you a bigger house today, right? Like it doesn't get you any more extra stuff than it did back then. It's just the numbers gone up because the currency's been debased against that asset.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting point. It's a very good question.
For me, when I look at gold, I don't look at the price. I look at like I said, I want to get another kilo this year, say. So I look at gold and I say I want to buy a certain amount of it. Now, when I look at Bitcoin, because I'm new into Bitcoin, I do watch that price and I say, well, I want to cash out at a certain amount. So it is about the thing is we live our life through fiat currency, like it or lump it, we do, right? We have to pay our bills with fiat currency. We have to buy stuff with fiat currency. That's how it is. And so when we hold all these things, like Camel just said, we're looking at the price of it a lot of times because it's like, well, what can I get for it now? Or what value does it hold for me now? Has it beaten inflation? Has it not beaten inflation? So I think it's like yourself, CPM, you're very much into Bitcoin. So you look at how much Bitcoin you hold rather than the price. And that's the same for me in gold. But when I look at Bitcoin, where I'm new to it, I look at how much is it worth now? I put in a X amount. Let's say I put in 10 grand and it's now worth 16 grand. Well, I want it to go to 30 grand and I'll cash it out because I'm not as sure of it as I am with gold. So I think two things play into this. One, how much you need that fiat currency or how much you want to get to so that you feel comfortable, you've made some money and you can use it to your benefit. And then two, this is an asset I want to hold and I have a lot of faith in it. And therefore, I don't care what it's worth at the moment. Maybe I will in the future, but I want to be holding 2, 3, 4, 5 kilos of gold, for instance. And then I feel like I've got a sufficient amount that I cover myself in all eventualities.
Cool. So, Camel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree. That makes sense. I mean,
The reason why I asked that question is, what's the exit plan? What lots of people go on about, if you're going to get into investing, you need an exit plan, quite rightly so. But what is your exit plan going to be based on? Now, this conversation that we've had over the last hour and 45 minutes, hour and 50 minutes, has been about, there's a possibility that the end could be something. It could be CBDCs. We don't know what that's going to be valued in. It could be something else, could be this, could be blah. So the reason why I ask that question quite often now is that knowing that the possibility of 6 years down the line, 7 years down the line, next decade, 2 years, whatever, the exit plan has a difference. So is it not more important to work on quantity of an idea rather than price? That's the reason why I asked the question. Because we don't know what it's going to be valued in, do we?
Yeah, if you're looking short term, as in just those people who look at it financially because they're looking at it in fiat currency, you can sort of understand it. But you're absolutely right. We don't know the future of CBDC or whatever it may be, or however we may change. And therefore, you'd be absolutely right. It's better to be looking at it as a quantity. I want this much gold or Bitcoin or whatever. And whatever it changes into, we'll have to see what the value is then. But if you're looking short term, or you don't believe that we're going to change our system, or you don't even know that things are changing, then people will look at it as a fiat currency or as a price value, because that's what they measure it in now.
Yeah, I think it's really tough because,
Yeah.
I mean,
It is a tough question. It's
tough
a great
because
thought-provoking one.
yeah, it's tough because the harsh reality is if you actually divide assets by M2SL, right, then what you find is like very few things, even though the dollar value has gone up, very few things have actually even created wealth for people. Like on that podcast with Kemazabi, he showed that you divide the Dow Jones by the money supply, and the thing is sideways for like 5 decades. Like you haven't made any money. But if you pull up a Dow Jones chart priced in dollars, as is the standard, then it looks like it's just done nothing but go up. But when you divide it, inflation adjusted, it's done absolutely nothing for 5 decades. So any money in there that you had would be perceived to have gone up in dollar value. Yet you won't be able to buy any more stuff with it. So it's a really weird one because only really big tech and Bitcoin have actually outpaced inflation. That's the harsh reality. I do think that gold, silver, commodities in general, and Bitcoin are going to continue to move significantly higher. I think although gold and silver have not outpaced inflation for the past few decades, they are certainly going to outpace inflation in the following decade. But generally speaking, it's like a really tough thing because for most people, they just want number go up, right? For most people, they just want more income, more net worth, more whatever. But like I said, it's really kind of messing with my mind, this question, because I know that, like I said, if you divide most assets by the money supply, then almost none of them have actually outpaced inflation. Like the best you can hope for, even the S&P 500 is barely break even once you've adjusted it for inflation. So even though the number goes up, you actually can't buy any more things with it. So it's kind of weird.
I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people don't take into consideration inflation at all. Not at all. They just think, yeah, I've made money out of that. And you're right, they haven't really. In spending power, they haven't.
Yeah, in purchasing power, it has not changed at all, and not in a long time. So it's kind of weird, and that is a gap that Bitcoin fills. But then big tech has outperformed it massively. So you could
But
hold.
then still, all of these things will outperform having the money sitting in your bank.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, no one's more bullish on gold and silver than me over the next 10 years, right? Like I literally think we do 10, 20x, no problem. So there's a time and a place to be in everything. But it's just a very weird question because, how else do you measure it? Or we're kind of trained to measure it in fiat currency, but the more I think about it, the more that seems like one of the worst possible ways to measure it.
I think a lot of these things have maintained your wealth rather than increased it. Whereas
Yeah.
if it was in a bank, it wouldn't even be maintained.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So you've at least held purchasing power by having it in the stock market, but you've had to take risk for that, right? You had to take significant risk for that just to break even. But you're right, like all of this beats keeping money in the bank, which is mathematically guaranteed to lose purchasing power over time.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe 2 hours has gone, dudes.
Is that 2 hours?
It's almost 2 hours, yeah.
I've got to go to the bathroom. I can't wait any longer.
Dude, go.
Okay, thanks.
Go. Yeah, do whatever you need to do. What
It
do you
never
Cobra?
ceases to amaze me, CPM, on these conversations, how much in depth we go into certain subjects in such a short time. And it leaves us wanting the next meeting. Not so much even the people viewing it or listening to it, but us in ourselves. It's like, oh, when are we doing the next one? When are we doing the next one?
It's so cool to push the barriers of thought.
Yeah.
It really is because we've had conversations offline quite a bit, and there's so many questions that we want to ask for your position, my position, because we're fathers. Not only are we asking it for our own sake, we're asking it for the thoughts of our children and our children's children.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
But the good thing is that we have slightly differing opinions, like, with myself and Camel, where we hold these conversations and I'll question certain things or dive deeper into it. I would encourage everyone to do that, even outside of this podcast, is
yeah.
have two people, and it's a discussion. It's not an argument or anyone's right or wrong. It's just about having these conversations and questioning certain things and go, well, all right, yeah, I get that point, but what about this? And how far can that go on? All right, well, what's the point of doing this if we're going to be controlled in this way? And I would say to people that have these conversations with your friends who are in the same thing and question it all, and it just brings to light so many things.
100% it does. It's amazing. I've got an interesting question to ask next of the pair of you. Obviously, I've got to wait for Camel to come back, but I do like, dude, I can't wait to see. Are you going to do a review on those Phoenix gold coins that you've got
I am. So I've been very lucky to be given a few pieces by shards of the Phoenix coin by the Bull Mint, which is an absolutely stunning coin. So I've got a tenth and a half and an ounce of gold and a silver. So I'm going to be doing that review. In fact, probably after doing this, I'm going to set up and do the review, which will be out in a couple of days. But I love my gold, and I've got several 1 ounces, but it just outclasses so many of the other gold 1 ounces because it's so different and so intricate. And it's one of the first Bull Mint products that they've brought out under their name rather than producing it for Newey or anything else, which is what the Bull Mint have done before. So yes, there will be a massive review coming out on the Phoenix in the next couple of days.
I am looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that indeed. God, the questions I've got, I want Camel to listen to.
I'm
Fair
back.
enough. Well,
I'm back.
He's back. He's back. He's
there
back.
you
He's
go.
back. Guys, as we wind this one down, I'm going to ask a question that I don't know where you want to take the answers, really. But how do you think your whatever you're trying to do with your YouTube social media setup, how do you think it's going?
Go on, Camel.
I think, generally speaking, it's going in the right direction. I think slowly but surely building the channel, which is what I wanted to do. I think, wholly speaking, people seem to be grateful for the sharing that I do. I know the members are wholly impressed and happy with the service, so that's really good. And I don't really know. I do this because I actually really enjoy it. There's definitely a component that wants to help people, but for the most part, like I just really enjoy that. This is what I do every day, right? I sit at my computer, I look at charts, I try and figure out what's going on, come up with an idea, and so I just like sharing it. Really, I just really enjoy that, and people seem to like it, so that's really nice. And yeah, I just want to keep doing that really and see where it ends up.
Cobra?
And for me, well, mine took a very different direction. So when I started my channel, I was getting whatever I was buying for myself, and I was doing reviews on it and showing what I got and etc. etc. And then I started the auction, which was supposed to be once a month, just a little hobby thing, and getting the community together and getting pieces into the UK that no one's ever seen. And as you can see by my display, there's some amazing coins there, which are very collectible. Now the auction has gone weekly, which means, yes, I'm getting the community together. I've got, 60 members plus other people who come into the auctions and really enjoy the chat and all chat outside it and get on with each other, which is perfect. Yes, it's bringing the pieces in from all over the world that people have never seen before, and that is absolutely amazing for me. But it has taken away from me having the time to do my normal little videos and reviews. So I may only put out one a week now, where I was doing 3 or 4 a week. And that has upset me a little bit. And I need the time to go back a bit and start producing the videos on certain pieces and about what I think about gold and silver, how my views have changed and all that sort of stuff. But the auction is a massive thing, which is really taken off. It is absolutely brilliant fun. and I still get those pieces in there. So it's a bit of good and bad on my side with my channel and where I'm going with it. But a few adjustments and I can bring it totally back on track. And a shameless plug, a couple of hours after this video goes out, there will be an auction tonight on Sunday, 6 o'clock p.m. on the Cobra Stackers channel.
I was going to give you that plug at the end, but
Thank you.
that's absolutely. I've got an interesting question for you. Obviously, for your auctions, you've been obviously building a network outside of what we see from a supplier network. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How's that trend going? What's the sentiment within that? Is it good? Is it a little bit sort of, or is it
The
bad?
market,
Or what?
the market out there is still very, very strong, and you can see that with the amount of products that are coming out. It hasn't slowed down. We're getting new products weekly, and I mean, the Berlin Money Fair, which we went to together, was an amazing step up for me in meeting the right people to be able to get all these sort of things. But day in, day out, week in, week out, I am getting new products offered to me, in advance. So this is going to be released in May, June, July, even August. We're already ordering things for stuff that's going to be released in August. Now, if the market was going downhill, as in people weren't buying so much, you wouldn't see the releases coming out as quickly as they are. So the market is still there. People are still buying gold and silver, and they're still buying the collectible stuff. It hasn't slowed down. In fact, it's increasing in pace.
I'm really pleased to hear that, and I would largely expect that to continue, to be honest, because as price goes up, it's going to motivate more people to be like, oh wow, gold is going up, like now's the time to get in. So I'm pleased that it's going that way, and I'm sure that that will probably continue, to be honest.
Yeah, and we're getting new people coming in all the time. I mean, every week I'll have someone contacting me saying, oh, I'm new into stacking or collecting. What would you advise me to get and all that? Which I can't give them advice. I can just try and look at their circumstances, what they can afford and what they're looking to achieve, and try and help them, along their path. But we are getting new people. And I totally agree. When people see the price going up, it's like, oh, I don't want to miss out. I'm jumping in. Just my advice is be careful when you jump in, not to spend all your money. And we see it time and time again. Someone might have 10 grand sitting there, and within a month, they've spent that 10 grand on all this beautiful new stuff that they see. Slow down, watch, come into the auctions and sit there for a month or 2 months and just watch and chat to people and understand what each different piece is and what you want to do. But yeah, it's growing. It's definitely growing in the UK.
What about you, Camel? What's the sentiment like on your channel?
Everyone is trigger happy. Really, I have to keep telling them like, calm down, calm down.
Yeah.
Wait, let's be patient. Let's wait for the high quality setups. Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because having the members section really forces me to strive for perfection, right? Because I know people are going to watch it, and like they're going to watch it, and they have to make their own decisions, of course, and it's entirely up to them. But I know that they are going to watch it and go, "Oh, well, this seems like a good idea." So I have to be really careful what I say. I have to really strive for perfection. And like I said, people are very trigger happy, particularly with those crypto stocks. We do a lot of the crypto miners in the member section, and I can see people being like, "Oh, it's moving higher! Like I'm buying a while." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! We got a cycle low coming up.
Yeah.
Let's chill.
Mhm.
Let's sit back. Let's collect some data. Let's figure out which ones are going to go first, and then when we get to the cycle low, then we can play it properly." So, but yeah, sentiment is generally really, really positive there. The members tend to be very hardworking. From what I can see, there's a lot of people that are very, very hardworking, and yeah, it's just a really cool place to be. It's just really, really enjoyable to have a community and to be doing our best to kind of stay on the right side of the trade and to share ideas as well. And we've been playing a lot of the paper gold derivatives and gold and silver minor positions and that kind of thing, and that's going really well at the moment as well. So wholly speaking, yeah, it's really enjoyable, but it does definitely add a level of complexity and stress to me personally, because I have to strive for perfection. I can't just be willy-nilly, like, yeah, I'm going to buy this. Whereas years ago, I might have been able to get away with that, but now I've got like an audience watching, so it has to be perfect, you know.
Fair play. That's really cool. That's why I love having you both. You're both pretty pro, and you give a shit. It's the first time I swore, if that's a swear word, which is pretty good for me. It is beautiful, absolutely beautiful to witness and watch and be a part of. Oh God, I was going to ask you something. Oh God, what was it? It was really relevant as well. Sugar. Oh man,
That's the whiskey.
I've been really good actually. I've been drinking tea.
Oh,
Yeah, I have had two whiskies, but that's really tame for me over 2 hours, to be fair. Um, oh yes, I know what I was going to ask. Do you see any um, any type of people being desperate to improve quickly their
yes.
monetary investing or do you see any signs of people want to just want to make money really quickly, or are they more happy to take that slow
Mm.
accumulative type build up of wealth?
Unfortunately, go on. Sorry, Camel.
No, no, please, you go first, you.
Okay, unfortunately, bruv, I see it all the time where people are trying to make a quick amount of money.
Mm.
And that to me is very dangerous. Um, as I said before, they will take their money, they'll go, yeah, silver's going up, or they'll watch a few videos on YouTube which will say, yep, silver's been underpriced for ages, it's been held back and it's going to explode. And you see these videos constantly. I've seen it for a year and a half, videos again and again and again. And so people are looking for a quick buck because they may be desperate. Well, that's the most dangerous time to invest, is when you're desperate, I believe, because you're going to risk everything you've got on that hope that it's going to make money very quickly. Well, number one, and I can only speak for gold and silver, not so much for Bitcoin, because you guys are the experts in that. In gold and silver, the majority of the time, it takes time. Yes, we've seen a good £200-300 increase in gold per ounce in the last couple of months, but that's not your average way of working on it. So, yes, there are people who jump on that bandwagon, and the fear of missing out is a real and massive thing in the precious markets, precious metal markets. But I honestly would say it's dangerous. You need to understand what you're doing, and you need to think about it on a more long-term basis. As far as crypto goes, I'll pass on to Camel.
I mean, I see a lot of, I say a lot, I definitely see a fair amount of people that are in a rush to make money. There's a saying that people tend to overestimate what they can achieve in the short term and underestimate what they can achieve in the long term. And I think that absolutely rings true. I I see some worrying things every once in a while pop up in my comment section, or someone will email me. One that pops to mind fairly recently was somebody said, "Oh, so you think Bitcoin will, find a cycle low in about 25 days and then it should be up?" And then they followed that up by saying, "I took a massive loan against my business and put it all in
Oh,
Bitcoin." So I really need it to come out of that cycle low, swinging. And I was thinking, "Oh man, like." this is this is a really terrible idea. Really,
yeah,
really, really terrible idea to borrow money. To borrow money at all to invest is silly, right?
yeah,
Right off the bat. And it really shows the difference between like a professional and somebody that's just shown up trying to make a quick buck. Because for me, if we make a cycle low and go, I go, okay, fine. And if we make a cycle low and it fails, well, it's not going to harm me because the risk is managed, right? Because I understand that it's just a trade setup and sometimes they fail. So I'm never going to be betting the farm. I'm never going to be borrowing money. I'm never going to be remortgaging my house or anything like that. So I'm always protected, right? Even in the West, I can lose a bit, but I'm certainly not going to damage myself or my total net worth or my portfolio value or anything like that. So so yes, things like that happen from time to time. People are like, oh, I borrowed this money and I really need it to go up. And that is an absolutely terrible, terrible
mm,
position to be in. You certainly should not be borrowing money, or you should only invest money that you're willing to take to the end of the garden and set on fire. That's an absolute solid rule.
yeah.
If you're not willing to go to the end of the garden and light it on fire, then you should not be investing with it. So yeah, I definitely see a fair share of that. And I notice for the most part, people show up and they're like, okay, I've got some money and I want to try to learn about this and I want to take it slow. And those are the people that tend to do well versus some other people that go, well, I've got X amount, I've got £1,000 and I'm just trying to make 1 million by next week. Right. And there's no quicker way to lose £1,000, honestly. There's really no quicker way to lose it. You actually might as well just take it to the bottom of the garden and set it on fire. So yeah, definitely always think longer term. But what I said earlier about people overestimating what they can achieve in the short term and underestimating what you can achieve in the long term. I know I said this on the last podcast, CPM, but if you type into Google compound interest calculator
Yeah.
and then pull one of those up, if you type in an arbitrary number, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, and slap some interest on it, 50% a year or 10% a year, whatever the number is, and extrapolate it out. I encourage you to do this with some low numbers, 10, 15, 20, and then try it with 70% because that's what Bitcoin averages. And then extrapolate it out over 2, 3, 4 decades. And what you'll notice is the numbers are absolutely mind-blowing, but the only way you get to those mind-blowing numbers is you need to have a lot of time in the game. So if you can think longer term, you're going to massively be able to increase your quality of life. But if you think you can just show up to market, turn £1,000 into 1 million by next Friday, then you're in for a very, very rude awakening. And I would certainly caution against anyone that is thinking about borrowing money to invest. Like that is for professionals. That's for the highest level of the elite traders only. If you're not a seasoned trader with a decade of experience plus, then you certainly should not even be considering borrowing money to invest.
Fantastic. With regards to your left translated hypothesis, are you still working?
What?
Hypothesis, whatever it's called.
Hypotenuse.
I was thinking exactly the same. I didn't say nothing.
Whatever. Fuck it. That's the third whiskey. You know what I mean.
Do I?
That's the
I want to say the
danger.
word, but I don't want to get it wrong and sound like an idiot, so I'm not saying it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. How many
Go
rums?
on, Cobra. You got it. You got it.
Hypothesis.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Cobra, very much indeed.
Oh, brilliant.
I can't stop laughing.
Sorry, CPM. You were saying.
You're not
With your
sorry at all.
hippopotamus.
Not sorry at all. What a load of bollocks. You loved it. You loved it. Right. With your left translated, whatever Cobra said, do you still see the 4-year cycle playing out? That's really blown it now, isn't it?
Good. Yeah, so the left translated, I think it's important to define what left translated is, first of all, because I see this is something that comes up all the time. People we get one little dip that is basically sideways in Bitcoin, and I get people in the comments going, ha, told you it wasn't going to be left translated. So left translation means the top of that cycle comes before the halfway point. And if we're talking about a daily cycle for the S&P 500, which is about 40 days on average, that would, of course, mean the halfway point is 20 days. And therefore, a left translated cycle would be a peak that shows up before day 20. Now, if we move over to Bitcoin, Bitcoin undergoes 60-day cycles. If it's going to left translate, that means the top would come before the halfway point, which in a 60-day cycle, of course, is 30 days. So any top that came in the daily cycle before day 30 would qualify as left translated. And if we extrapolate this out to the larger multi-year cycles, which for Bitcoin is 4 years, measured low to low, that's bear market low to bear market low, is 4 years. Of course, that means the midpoint of that is a 2-year from the first bear market low, which puts us at November of this year. So November of 2024 would be exactly halfway along. That would be 2 years from the bear market low that we saw in November of 2022. So if we're going to have a left translated cycle, that means we would expect a top to form in Bitcoin sometime before November of 2024. So if we get a top that forms anytime this year before November, we can qualify this thing as left translated. So now that we've defined left translated, are we still on for what was the question? Are we still on for a left translated cycle?
And you took the piss out of me.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens with whiskey and rum. Diet Coke is okay, by the way.
Start off.
Are we still on for a left translated cycle, right?
No,
That's the
are we
question.
still on for this 4-year cycle to play out?
Okay. So I swear you mentioned left translated though.
I did,
So where does the left translated part come into the question?
because it's part of the 4-year cycle.
And what was the original question?
What I said.
Oh
Which was
my
what?
God.
If the left translated cycle, which is, I presume, like, oh, right, the way I'm thinking about it, we do 4-year cycles, yeah,
Yeah.
in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now, if the left translated becomes a part of that, does it become a part of that 4-year cycle or not?
Yeah, so it just means
Okay.
so the only thing that is really written into the code of the universe is the 4-year cycle, and that
Yeah.
means that between major bear market lows, we're going to have approximately 4 months.
Yeah.
Right. So given that we've had the last bear market low at November of 2022,
Yeah.
that tells us that in November of 2026, plus or minus a couple of months, you can give it a couple of months wiggle room, we should get another major bear market low. That is the 4-year cycle, 4 years between the November 2022 low and the November 2026 low.
Yeah.
So in terms of the left translated cycle, all that means is the top would come before the halfway point,
Sure.
meaning before November of this year.
Sure.
Now, if that happens, if we happen to put in a top before November of this year, does that change the ultimate trajectory of the 4-year cycle low? No, it does not. We should still expect a major bear market low to occur in November-ish,
Sure.
plus or minus a month or two of 2026.
So could we not have had an already left cycled high
Yeah, it's steady.
with the high that we've already had?
Yeah. In theory, that could be the high, and we might be about to trend down now between now and November 2026. I don't think that's very likely, but we can't rule it out. It's a non-zero probability.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Last question from me, anyway, is: do you think social media hinders investing? What am I trying to say here? Do you think that the narrative of what's happening in social media at this current moment in time is hindering the thought processes over how we should invest or protect our money? Good question, really. Deep one.
Positive and negative from my side.
Yep.
Go
on and
I
tell me.
think it depends on what you watch. So in anything, there are two sides to every story. And in social media, there are two groups of people. There are ones who are positive on everything and positive on investing in gold and silver or Bitcoin. And there are people who are negative on it. So I think there's two sides to it, and it depends on what you watch. And again, it comes down to do your own research. Don't believe everything you see on social media. Take the good bits that make sense and help your understanding of the markets and what's going on, and push aside the extreme views from either side, whether it be extremely positive, gold's going to shoot the moon, silver's going to shoot the moon, Bitcoin's going to go to record highs, or the extremely negative of Bitcoin is a terrible asset to go into, it's insecure, it's this, that, and the other. Again, do your own research, and there's always positive and negative on the extremes of any subject.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of social media, I think it's like anything, right? There's an awful lot of really bad stuff out there, and there's also some good stuff. And ultimately, it comes down to the individual to watch all of it and then decide, what's the good stuff and what's the bad stuff. I don't know if social media has necessarily hindered it. In fact, I would make the argument that some of the best alpha available is on Twitter. And I'm not on Facebook or Instagram or any of those other ones. I'm just YouTube and Twitter. But the amount of alpha I stumble across on Twitter is unbelievable. And there's certainly some terrible ideas and some terrible accounts that do nothing but doom post all the time. And they've been wrong the whole way up. and eventually we're going to top, and they're going to say, "I told you so." But but yeah, I think wholly speaking, like anything, if you take in all the information and you be as objective as possible and you make your own decisions and you educate yourself, then you can certainly find more positivity than the negativity on social media. Certainly on Twitter and YouTube, I think there's plenty of really, really high quality content out there.
Brilliant stuff. Well, that's well over 2 hours. Going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much. How many swigs have you had? Come on.
I had a little bit of rum and then I popped a cork. You may hear it. Like I don't know if you heard. Cobra, did you hear it earlier on?
No, no,
You didn't hear it. It sounded like a gunshot
no.
going off. You'll probably notice it when you watch it if you watch it back. But yeah, I've been drinking prosecco for the rest of this.
Hey.
I ran out
Very
of
nice.
rum, so I had to grab the prosecco. We've got unlimited quantities of prosecco in this house because for some reason everyone always gives it as gifts, and neither one of us really drink it. So
Nice. Fair enough. How many
And
cigs, Cobra?
2 cans of Diet Coke, 1 sugar-free Red Bull, and probably about 6 cigs.
Oh, that's not bad.
not
Yeah.
bad.
That's pretty cool. Guys, I can't thank you enough. Seriously, as always, there's some great alpha in here. Anyone that's wanting to actually use and be free with a thought process can get some extremely good content from here. At the end of the day, it's not financial advice; it's just opinions. But it's pretty good, wise opinions. Look after yourselves. I can't thank you enough. I'm going to give the last words to you guys to promote. One thing I will say, it'd be really cool. We have some great feedback from these discussions, and I'm averaging on my channel over 700 views. So it'd be really cool to get it up to the one. Yeah, it'd be really cool for my channel. It's unbelievable. It'd be really cool to get it up to that 1K mark view wise. Hopefully that will happen going forward. But yeah, Cobra, go on, promote yourself, dude.
All right. Well, first of all, before I promote myself, guys, any of you listening or watching this out there, please hit that like button. It really does help with the algorithm and pushing the word out there to everyone. And if you're not subscribed to CPM, then do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's really important, and a lot of work goes in by CPM and all content creators out there to bring you these great shows and these great conversations. So please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. As far as my channel goes, within a couple of hours at 6 o'clock tonight, there will be another auction, and there are some amazing pieces out there. You do not have to be a member. You do not have to buy. You do not have to bid. Come and join the community, have a lot of fun, see some amazing pieces. And if you do want to buy anything, then please join up and bid away and build up your collections or your stacking.
Come on.
You can find me at Camel Finance on YouTube and on Twitter. And yeah, that's pretty much that.
Wow,
Bro, you got to work on that. You know that, bro.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's okay. It's all
Well,
right.
I'm going to bum you up then, Camel. I'm gonna bum you up now. I'm nearly 60 years of age. I've I use forgive me, Cobra. I'm going to speak about Camel here. Everyone knows this through my Whiskey Wednesdays and whatever. But the guy is just working frigging hard to put out a message out there for you guys. And at the end of the day, it's up to you whether you take it on board or not. Don't marry his ideas. Just use his unbelievable input into putting out messages out there to learn for yourself. It's pretty rare to find someone that will put all this time and effort out there to try and educate you. So yeah, Camel Finance. Thank you very much, dude. You've taught me a lot. I haven't married your ideas, but I've used your ideas a ton to improve what I'm doing in my life. So yeah, big punt out there to you, dude.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Not at all. Thank you very much, guys. And I'll see you all again soon, maybe in a couple of weeks. We do it 2 weeks time, yeah? You good for
Sounds
that?
good.
Yeah, should be.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll orchestrate it, but we won't.
Yeah,
let
two
it.
or three. 2 or 3 would be absolutely fine. Yeah.
All right, then. Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Thank you, CPM. Thank you, Camel.
Thanks,
No,
Cobra.
no worries. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye bye.